Hi there, I'm Randy Patterson, and this is Psychology Salon, a channel about psychological issues. If you like this kind of thing, click subscribe. Today I'd like to talk about normality and abnormality, diversity and psychopathology. And my reason is that in recent years, I think our definition of normality is getting narrower, and our definition of mental illness is getting broader, and I think that's a problem. When I went to university as an undergraduate many years ago, psychology was divided into many sub-areas: learning, sensation and perception, social psychology, community psychology, neuropsychology, personality psychology, cognitive psychology, clinical psychology. And initially, in my mind, all of these were about the same in importance and prominence. In fact, they never were. Learning, for example, was a few people teaching pigeons how to peck discs and seeing if psychology students could learn lists of random words. Two of the courses that most psychology undergraduates like me wound up taking were personality psychology and abnormal psychology. Personality looked at individual differences within the scope of what we think of as normal range human experience. Abnormal covered unusual experiences and traits that are outside that range, where something seems to have gone wrong and might need to be corrected. Now, most human characteristics are like height or weight. They fall on a continuum. You got a few people way down at one end, more people as you get toward the middle, and a few way up at the top end. Intelligence is an example of this. There are a few people who are quite limited in this way. There are a few geniuses, and most people cluster somewhere in between. As a matter of fact, we call this kind of thing the normal curve, which is mostly a coincidence because it's not named after what's normal for human beings. It's just how most things are normally distributed. So, personality is the study of individual differences in human behavior along various of these continua. Take introversion, extroversion, for example. Most people are somewhere toward the middle, maybe a little more extroverted, maybe a little more introverted. Way off at the ends are people who are so introverted they can't bear to be around other people at all. And at the other end, people who are so gregarious they never spend any time in solitude or self-reflection. So what about psychological disorders? In a lot of medical disorders, we're not talking about these kinds of continua. Your leg is either broken or it's not. Either you have COVID or you don't. That pain is either a heart attack or it's indigestion. But even in physical medicine, a lot of ill health is defined as being way out at one end of a continuum. Cholesterol levels, for example. How much is too much? At some point, you have to draw a kind of arbitrary line in the sand and say, okay, higher than that, and we should really do something about it. In mental health, almost everything is on a continuum. There aren't many things that are just yes or no. So we take those normal curves on various characteristics like sadness or stress levels or proneness to getting overwhelmed by our emotions, and we say, okay, people in the middle are fine, but way up at one end or way out at the other, or maybe both, that's a little unusual, and it's probably causing problems, so let's call that a disorder. But where do we draw the line? How about here? So what do we got? 98% of the population is normal range. 2% are what we've decided to call disordered out at the ends. Great. So now we have two fields of study. Personality, which is the study of normal human variability, and psychopathology, which is the study of experiences outside the lines. And because we're trying to help with psychopathology in the clinic, we usually call that clinical psychology. How people go outside the lines and how we can help them back to normal range human experience so they can live their lives. Not making everybody the same, but giving them the flexibility to, well, to hang out with the rest of us. So, okay. Personality is the psychology of the 98%, psychopathology, the study of the 2%, or whatever. But clinical psychology began noticing something. Sure, some people are so disabled by depression or anxiety or stress or waves of emotion or unusual sensory experiences that they absolutely cannot function. And everybody would agree there's something wrong here. But just over the border, just over that line, there's even more people with a bit less anger, a bit less overwhelmed, a bit fewer obsessions and compulsions, a bit less depressive symptomatology, and frankly, they can get distressed too. It can foul up their relationships, their work, their life satisfaction. What about them? So over time, we moved the lines. A bit more, and a bit more, and a bit more, and the book of mental disorders just got fatter and fatter and fatter, and it got easier and easier to find yourself in its pages. What we call major depressive disorder today is not at all what we called depression in the 1960s. We've broadened the definition, and vastly more people are in psychopathology territory, and correspondingly fewer are in normal range territory. In the case of depression, some estimates are over 100 times higher. That's probably a bit extreme, but you get the idea. And most of that has come out of the goodness of our hearts, the desire to help more and more people. Some of it has come from profit motive. If we can call more people depressed, we can sell more medications. And some of it comes from policy. In the United States, for example, many people's health insurance requires them to have a diagnosable mental disorder in order to get coverage to see a therapist. So there's a push to make those categories as wide as possible. Today we hear things like 1 out of 5 Americans and Canadians has a mental disorder, or 1/3 of children have problems with mood. And we start to mix up normal experiences like anxiety with anxiety disorders, or feeling down with clinical depression, being a bit nerdy with autism, being energetic or distractible with ADHD. And as the category of psychopathology widens, the category of normal human experience narrows. The field of personality shrinks, and normal human diversity becomes defined as dysfunction or disorder. Increasingly, the definition of normality becomes conformity and sameness. Diversity is pathologized and regarded as something to be treated. Today, if you look at psychology departments across North America, you'll find that clinical psychology is going strong, but the personality field has shrunk. In most departments, it now gets lumped together with social psychology or developmental psychology. The study of the breadth of human diversity has itself diminished. When I was younger, I was in the DSM. Being gay was defined as a mental disorder. And what is a mental disorder? For practical purposes, it's what's in the book. If it's in the book, it's a disorder. In 1973, the American Psychological Association did something that turns out to be very unusual. It stole something from psychopathology and put it into the category of normal human diversity. And that really seems to have helped a lot of people. It's made our society more tolerant, more inclusive, more diverse. Nobody suffered from suddenly being considered normal. But since then, almost all of the changes have been in the other direction. What was normal has become abnormal. What was personality has become psychopathology. Difference became disorder. And there is no evidence that the overall mental health of the population improved. Indeed, it seems only to have gotten worse. Life is difficult for everybody. Finding it difficult doesn't mean you have a disorder, and you don't have to be disordered to benefit from talking with someone. I tend to think that we don't need any more disorders, and we don't need to convince even more people that their minds are dysfunctional, not just different. I think we need to broaden our definition of what it is to be human, not shrink it. In the battle between personality and psychopathology, psychopathology has mostly won. But I think humans have lost. Maybe the balance needs to be pushed back a bit. I'm a psychologist with degrees in clinical psychology. But if it's a hockey game, I'm rooting for the other team, personality. There are other videos on this channel on the psychology of everyday life. Click the subscribe button for more. I also have an online course site, psychologysalon.teachable.com, with programs for professionals and for the general public. And my guide, The Assertiveness Workbook, is available from bookstores and online booksellers. Thanks for watching.